I'm Dan from Ozgel,
And I'm Andy from Invisible Injuries.
and today I'm having a chat with Andy, a veteran Australian commando.
Thanks for having me on the Ozgel podcast, mate. I really appreciate it.
Mate, it's our pleasure. Thanks for giving us your time. And mate, Andy, it's been a long time since we've been able to catch up. So absolutely thrilled to have you here. But for the people that are watching at home, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and where you've come from?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's great to be reacquainted, mate. And I feel honoured for you to invite me on today. So I'm Andy Fermo from Invisible Injuries. And formerly, I used to be an Australian commando. So back in the day, many moons ago, that's what I did. But before I became a commando, I actually grew up in mining towns, so in the 80s. So with us growing up in those mining towns, we had to make our own fun. And part of that was, going about the bush there and at that time as well, in Australia, BB guns were still allowed.
Yep.
So we had those BB guns and everything was a bit of an adventure. So we had to go and make our own fun because there wasn't really that much about.
Yep.
So growing up, when we moved to the city, I actually I got introduced to a cadet. So I'm going to admit, yes, I did do the cadets and as a kid, a teenager growing up, that was amazing. Like what I really enjoyed with having done the cadets, because there wasn't anything like this back then, was that it still gave me that sense of adventure. I got to do all the cool things, like, the promise of being able to shoot a gun on a camp and all that.
Yeah.
So that always interested me in terms of that. But I also, like later on, after cadets, I succumbed to the partying, the girls, the beach and all that sort of thing. So I cut that away. And it wasn't until later on, once I was sort of like doing uni and some work, that I was partying a little bit too much. And my brother had joined.
Oh, that's not like you at all.
No, not like me at all. And so I joined. There was I had a bit of a family and friend intervention, let's say, and my brother was in the army as well. He was in Signals.
Darwin?
Yeah, Darwin.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was also in Signals.
Hey, Darwin.
Hey, how you going, mate? He sort of flew back from Melbourne and they did this whole thing and said, mate, what are you doing? And so I had that point now then to choose what I was going to do. Yeah. And I thought, yep, I'll have a go, but I'll only just dip my foot into the water, and I'll sign up as a reservist or as a choco as it's known. And funny thing about that was with my cultural heritage, I'm Filipino. In my heritage, the old man was like, oh, you have to get a job that's got skills and this, you have to be a doctor. I go, I'm never going to be a doctor, man, but maybe I could do something with computers just to sort of to please that part of it, Oh, my son's doing well. He's going to be in IT, right? Okay, no worries. And as I was doing, going through recruits, I was as a choco. I liked it too much, and I wasn't doing that partying anymore. So I'm like, I'm going to sign up as a full-time guy. So anyway, I didn't really know much about that job. It was in SIGs still, and I said to my det commander or team commander, hey, what's something that I could still be, carrying packs and shooting guns around, doing some cool shit, and then and also sort of learning something a little bit sneaky peeky, a bit nerdy. Yep. He goes, well, you could be a bear, and I said, oh, what's a bear? He goes, it's EW. I said, oh, what's this? He goes, electronic warfare, and I go, oh.
The strange people of the Corps.
The strange people of the Corps. But what was the clincher with that? He goes, oh, you need a top secret clearance. Oh. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, no, like James Bond, you get your top secret clearance. There's all these names. And I'm like, I'm sold. Sign me up. And that's all I knew.
Then there's an anticlimax.
Then there was the anticlimax. There was like the 2 years worth of training and the computer. So I sound,
Morse code.
The Morse code. But that was amazing. And I really grew to love that job very much. And so when we graduated, and that's where we met at 7 SIG in Toowoomba. So as Dan said, we'd served together. That was when we were both posted to that unit at the time, and Yeah, I just really yeah. So
Some messy days.
it was some really messy days. So
Very different time.
Yeah, it was a very different times, and it was a really good lifestyle though, because where we were in Cabal, it was just a little bit north of Toowoomba. Had everything was on base that we needed, and especially as a single young person that's just wanting to go out on adventure. It was great. 3 square meals a day. The boozer was just around the corner.
So many people living on the base.
Yeah.
That was the beautiful thing. Remember the condo parties? Oh, man.
In terms of the condo parties, it was just really, really cool. Like, because there were so many people living on the base and there was a great culture at that time. I think, for us, that was a big heyday. We'd go down, we'd eat our food, then you go and do some other stuff, then go down to the boozer where the booze was cheap and it was
the
more
booze is like it's like the pub that's
the wet mess. So that's you got the dry mess where you get the food, and then you get the wet mess. But that was also a social gathering area. But then when that knocked off at about 11, we'd either go back to the condos or into town. And the big condo parties, it was a great lifestyle. Besides the parties, there was the networking and the computer bloody, all the Call of Duty type stuff and all the.
Jeez, that's going back now.
It's going back.
I remember
it's come a long
the
way.
condo parties. It was you and Dave Cotton. So hey Cotto, if you're
Cotto,
watching,
how you going, mate?
But yeah, you and Dave Cotton used to DJ, from what I remember, and then there'd be like 20 to 50 people there just getting on the sauce all night. It was really good.
Well, that's right. So we'd interrupt their gaming, and then they'd come back out, and we'd have the condo party. So basically, we'd take our bongos from the boozer, from the wet mess, take it back to the condos there, and then people would just. Yeah.
Oh, so many messy nights.
So many messy nights, but it was in good fun. So it was a great lifestyle. But then in 2006, the commandos had been issued or given that mandate to become a special forces unit. They already were, but they had that mandate to be TAG East basically.
Yep.
So they got that black domestic role that they had, and so they sent us as a troop to help out, and the Commonwealth Games was on that year.
Yep.
So that was the big thing for me, that first sort of eye-opening thing. And again, like I mentioned before, with not really knowing too much in that field, because it was the Commonwealth Games, they were practicing doing a lot of really cool stuff. And I remember they called them full mission profiles, where they'd rehearse scenarios based on what might happen if something did happen, Yep. And I remember clearly the night that I decided to become or have a go at being a commando is we were out at some outback, old disused hospital, and the guys were doing this profile. They came in on they came in on the helicopters, and then they'd come in and then they'd flare, and then the guys in black would jump out, and then all this banging, and then they were going through.
Yeah.
And at that time they were, so with some of the ones that had a converted M4 using paint. Right,
Yeah.
but the
simunition rounds that hurt like hell.
Yeah, they really hurt like hell.
It's like, so for those guys watching, simunition, it's like a real bullet, but instead of the normal metallic shell you have on the end, it's paint.
Yeah, and plastic one where it's going to burst. And this thing, if you think paintball puts welts on you, this thing, it hurts.
Yeah, that's nuts. Well, look, speaking of that, so let's start getting into the nuts and bolts of your journey into the Special Forces. I think a lot of the people at home, they see little TV series every now and again, and I think the general consensus from people on the outside looking in is that, you just go and do a selection course, and then if they like you, you're in. And that's pretty much it. But there's a lot more to it, isn't there?
There is a lot more to it.
So take us through that journey. What's the process?
Okay, yeah. So like when I saw this stuff, and then I asked the boss, I said, "Well, how do I get into this?" And he goes, "Mate, you can sign up online, and then you put your forms in." But even at that point, you have to have been in for a couple of years. There is another program that you can go direct, but usually they're looking for more guys that are a little bit more mature and got a little bit more ground time up. So mid-20s.
So they like you to be in the army already.
In the army already, or if you're entering outside what they used to call it the direct recruitment scheme, you want to have at least a couple of years ground time, because into the Special Forces, you're into your mid to late 20s when you sort of go in. And that's a maturity thing. It's not a capability thing if you're big and strong and smart. It's just more about living life skills, because you have to make decisions that really can affect whether it's your mates or the mission. There's some really important decisions. Now, when I did sign up, There's a test that you have to go for. So there's the first part is the psychological thing, is that you can't just be any gung-ho dude. You need to be able to have a nous about you to be able to make these decisions. And so you have to pass the psychological bit and to say, I'm not crazy. And then there's the bit there where you actually need to train up as well for the physical component. So even before then, they assess you to see...
the barrier test?
The barrier test. Now, the barrier test at the time included a few things, which was the physical components of it. There was the run. There was a 3.2. So in normal army...
3.2K run? Was it with gear?
Yeah, there were 3.2K run with gear. So at the time, the standard was 7 kilo webbing. And then in your trainers, and then you actually had to have your rifle as well, which is like 7 kilos or like a torsion
so it
bar.
would have looked pretty similar to. So we'll just put this picture up now.
Yeah.
It's a picture of you wearing that gear. So it's everything you see in this picture minus the bayonet, the knife on the end. So
absolutely. So everything that you needed for that, the 7 kilos, and to make sure that you could run.
Yep.
So they increased that standard from 2.4 to 3.2 Ks or something something like that. So you had to do that in a certain amount of time. I forget now.
Yeah.
Then you had to do your swim, which was swimming in cams and pants, and then you have to pass that. Then your push-ups and heaves, and all those things. And then the last component after all that, you do a basic orienteering assessment, a couple of other things, and then sort of basically what it was let's teach you something, see how quickly you can absorb it, and then
so it's all about how quickly you assimilate information.
All that, and then the last one was the pack march. So all that gear that we talked about before, but with boots on this time, and then a 21 kilo pack.
And that was just to get into attempt the selection
course,
that was
just
that's just the start of it.
You'd been facing the door bitch, and she's like, no, you got to pat your head and do this, and so even before then, the standard was like a BFA, or the CFA they call it, is 15 Ks. They made this 20 Ks with these packs. So basically, being a short ass like me, so I'm only 5'6", I pretty much had to run or shuffle the whole way. It was and I got there. I wasn't the fastest by any means or the strongest, but I got there within the time. And I think that's the important thing if you're thinking about doing that sort of thing, or going, okay, well, what's the standard? Is going, well, there's a time, and if I get in with that time, I don't need to be the fastest or the strongest. I just need to get into that time and then show that I want to do it. So I did, and then you got selected to become on the course. Now,
so the course. So this is something that I think some people see on TV and in some TV series and stuff. But talk us through. So what happens? Like you've got all your stuff with you. You go down on a bus or whatever. You rock up in Sydney for your commando selection course, and what's the first things that happen?
Oh yeah, the first thing that happens, so you get this load list, you do your test, and they say, okay, this course is going to be for this day, and they say you need your load list, everything has to be the same for this.
So a load list is just like a list of all your gear,
all the checklist of stuff that you need to bring, and they'll tell you, they'll be very specific about it, and this comes down to all the little things to see if you can actually take orders or take direction, even as simple as that. So when you rock up, you get off the bus, and they're like, oh, you beep, 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 beep. Get the off
So
the
it's
bus.
like you're back at Kapuka again.
Back at Kapuka. So basically the beasting starts, and it's not to be mean to you. It is just so that it instills that fear that you need to do what you need to do. It's not about bastardizing anyone. It's just to see what your mental strength's like. It's like, oh, he's being mean to me.
Get rid of that one.
Get rid of
See you later, candidate one.
Yeah, that's right. So then it was, okay, lay everything out on the floor, your pack, everything had to be in a little spot, and then they checked it. They checked you for contraband, they checked you for anything. So like for me, I'm only 5'6", not that big, more wiry built, solid but wiry. But you had these guys that were 6'6", brick shit houses, massive dudes. But you think that that you'd be on the gear or on the supplements or something like that. So they make sure that you're not on the supplements. And I'll get to this in a minute with part of the training, is that they check it. And then if it wasn't exactly as what was on the list, then that's already a mark against your name to go, okay, this guy can't follow this information.
Wow.
Right, the simple stuff. It's just really simple stuff. But once you did that, it was straight into the test, that other test again. So that test you did as the barrier was just like, hey, he didn't fluke it, you need to do it then again, which was the standard got even a little bit more, like the times that you needed to be able to achieve those standards from the entry test
Yep.
were even more. So it's like, okay, all right, well, maybe I shouldn't have drunk those celebratory beers a couple of days beforehand. And I was a little bit dehydrated, to be honest, with that off the bat. But, that first day, it was killer. And coming into summer, I was a little bit dehydrated, like I said. So I actually failed the first 3.2, and they let you get one attempt for each one. So the next one, I passed by maybe 10 seconds to spare.
Yeah.
And then that was my lesson learned that, I should have really prepared myself a little bit more. And then the rest of that time, that 2 weeks, was being beasted, basically. So, but what it did was it trained you to be able to start working as a team, because they've got the organisation that I was with was with the Commandos, and there's and the difference between the Commandos and the SAS is their role. So the type of person that they're looking for as well has to display the traits which is more attuned to the role that we were doing. And in Commandos, Stacey, was this large force with all tooled up, working as a team, whereas the SAS, let's just say, for example, without going into too much detail about their requirements, is that it's smaller teams, and then working small teams, but also working as an individual. Whereas with the Commandos, it's working as a team, large team, to make sure that you could work as one slick unit. And everything was revolved around testing what you could do for that.
Now, speaking of the stuff you're doing on the course there, I don't know if this is applicable to the Commandos as well, but is there some point where you're like all lined up and you have to take all your gear off, like all your clothes? And you're naked?
That point was right at the very start.
Oh, really?
So that point where you're at the very start was to make sure that you didn't have any contraband, you didn't have anything shoved up your ass or anything stashed anywhere.
And also probably to make you feel really uncomfortable, right?
Yeah, makes you feel really uncomfortable. You go, oh, it's nearly summer, but
so
it's
you're
really
standing
cold.
there stark naked in front of all these other people who are trying for selection.
Yeah.
And do the staff there that are running the course, do they sort of come around and sort of feed you and sort of, do they have a look and sort of point and laugh and stuff like that?
No. There's none of the getting the soap there and dropping it in front of you. Hey, boy, you dropped the soap. I'm like, ooh.
Yeah, pick that up.
Pick that, boy. Looking mighty fine with those jeans.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, because I've just, speaking to other mates in defence, I have heard of situations where they'll try to get someone come along and try and make the guys feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. There's that. There's the making them uncomfortable in that sense, in an embarrassing sort of sense, but there's also the making you feel uncomfortable from a being right in your face.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just and the reason for that is it's like that beasting that I was saying, Dan, is for the guys there, sometimes when you got someone that's really pushing and antagonizing you, you just want to bite back. You want to bite their head back or have some sort of reaction.
That doesn't happen in gel ball at all, does it, guys?
No, it wouldn't happen. Not once. Not me. That couldn't be me until I get hit a few times and everyone's picking on me. But that was part of it. So it was just about playing the game and going day by day. So each day, the thing's 2 or 3 weeks long. So each day for me, I didn't think of it as I need to get to the end. I just need to get by each hour, basically.
Yeah.
Every hour there was something new, and then it was just about playing the game. So even though I wanted to talk back or answer back or you get angry, you just don't, because it's just all a game, really.
Yep.
And it's just to be able to test to see whether or not, if you're on operations and something's happening, that you don't lose your cool.
Well, look, that selection course, right? So starts off with a whole big group of people and normally ends up with just a handful, doesn't it, that get through?
Yeah.
And you were among that handful.
Yes, yeah. So we went in with 100, and I was candidate number 33, actually. So for that is that you start off with 120 people, prospects, candidates there wanting to do it. Anything from sort of my 5'6" wiry frame to the built like a brick shithouse. And this is where when they check for contraband, Dan, is that some of the guys that really became reliant on it, after a few days of just water or the minimum food and just water, you could see them seep down into this really gaunt thing.
Yep.
And you go, well, the balloon just had a pin pricked in it, but you couldn't feed it, right?
So it's not always about how big and strong you are.
No. Yeah. So at the end, when you're just concentrating day on day at a time, by the end of that 2 or 3 weeks, what happens is then it whittles down to about 35.
Wow.
Right, so from 120
120.
to 35, and then you sit there at the end 35,
Yeah.
and what they do at the start of the course is they take your mugshot, and then everything's reported on. So basically, you could be one of those 35,
Yeah.
but not get through. So you might finish,
Wow.
but then what will happen is then they say, oh, for whatever reason, you might have to try a bit later on. And
So you complete every physical component of that course, and then you get to the very end, you pass everything, and they can still say, yeah, sorry, you're not selected.
yes, yep. And because they've got the standard there, and they won't falter that standard.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty about it. And you can't say, "Hell, you're being mean." And go, "Mate, we've got a standard for a reason." So even if they say, "Come back next year," that's still another test. If you look at it in that way, to go, "Hey, look, I really want this.
Yep.
Am I going to come back?"
Yeah, nice.
And try again. So most people might say, "Oh, no, fuck off," or
Yeah.
whatever. Sorry about the language. But the thing is, it's just all about that. And then once you sort of whittle that down, I think we were whittled down to about 25 or 6.
Yeah.
Then you do your continuation training. So that's to complete the
So that's the selection course. So you complete your selection course. They got the people that are selected.
Yep.
But it doesn't stop there.
No.
So,
that's just to be
the start.
selected for the continuation training or the training to turn you in from the basic soldier, like at recruiting, into your specialist stuff, or the basic commander or the basic trooper. For the guys in Perth, and so once you do that, then you have to learn your insertion skills, which is the main thing. So you do your advanced CQB, so all this stuff in the kill house.
Yeah, exactly like this.
Yeah, exactly like this, right? And then with stuff set up, and then you've got all that, and then you do your parachuting, amphib, vehicles. So all these specialist skills that you get, you need to do that over the next sort of 18 months to 2 years.
And from what I understand, even some of those individual components of that training can be quite terrifying as well.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you ever did you do the jumping out of the parachuting?
No, I was able to dodge that. So
so
no basic para for Dan. I would have hit the earth like a ton of bricks.
Well, I mean, look, there's the basic para, and the basic para, if you get past that, there's some rather cool stuff with parachuting for those of you who are into that type of thing. But I loved it.
That's like your Rapsal and stuff like that?
Yeah, the Rapsal, the different shoots, or then the military free fall as well, which is something that I always I'm spewing that the mandate for our troop or capability it hadn't been signed off on.
Yeah.
When I was separated from the army about 6 months later, they said, you need this for this role.
Ah, no.
And I'm like, I could have got my free fall and all this sort of stuff. And
but all the boating stuff, I've heard some absolute horror stories where people get dropped in the water and get told to swim back to a beach or something, and sometimes you just can't do it because
So even with that, there's a thing called Rapsal, which is ram air parachute static line, and when we used to go on the planes, one of the things that we used to do is it used to be called a parachute load follow. So we'd have the Zodiac with the boat, and we'd have the plane. So the boat would be put in a bundle like this, and then we'd be in a stack or a stick, or the people in a line, ready to chase it. And so by night, over the ocean, what we'd have to do is, and then you don't want the ocean to be shit, man. So basically,
so you don't even know what sea state it is, sort of thing.
No, not till you're in the water. Well, the guys on the ground do if it was a safety stuff, but when you're training, by the end of it, you do all the training basically by night. So everything the enabler is to make sure that you can do it at night time under the arduous conditions, let's say. So you jump out, they'd chuck the bundle out. So let's say this is the bundle. We'd be running after the bundle, try and follow it as close as you can to the bundle. So you're chasing it in the water, because when you got to the water, you then have to unwrap the bundle, put the motors on the back.
And if it's like sea state 50.
And so you're there trying to do this, and hopefully, because the motors would just be bunged into the center of the package, is that the motors didn't fall over and go, woo, see you later, to the bottom of the ocean. So you'd put it together, and whoever's was the closest. And this is where Dan was talking about, they drop you in and you'd try and swim. So just say if you came in and swam, you'd be trying to put on your fins and trying to swim to the boat, and hopefully by the time you got to the boat, or they'd put it together and they'd come to you, or else you'd have to be swimming with all your gear on the boat.
Far
out.
So pretty challenging experience.
Yeah, and then from once you're on the boat, then you have to transit to the spot, then get out. So all these little things are all challenging, but they're not unachievable.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And it all comes off that adage, how much do you want it? Did I train for it? But then once you're in with like even with a team,
Yeah.
and then you learn how to function as a team, even if you're still in training, or
Yeah.
even with the fields here. You know, once you're a tight unit, you start really doing it
Yeah.
together, and then that's how it gets you past.
Cool.
Yeah.
Man, that's so cool hearing about that, like quite the adventure. But let's fast forward a bit now. So, you did your barrier testing, completed selection, did your continuation training. So let's fast forward to Afghanistan now. So, if you're comfortable,
Yeah,
I do
absolutely.
understand there was an incident there. You got into a big contact. You want to tell us about
yeah,
that?
there was, with our organisation, there was always big contacts. Whenever we got into a fight, it was
Contact being a firefight, for those who don't know.
Yeah, so in contact with a firefight.
Yeah.
There was always big ones, but I'll fast forward to the second trip in particular. So
So that's your second trip in Afghanistan.
So
Wow.
I did two. Probably could have done more, but we could get to that.
Cool.
But on the second trip with Bravo Company, we went over, and it was really early in our tour,
Yep.
and we were going. So we were there for a little bit longer,
Yeah.
and there was no break in between when we'd go in, and so it was just operationally focused.
Yeah.
And we were a couple of days in to a 1 month, no showers, pretty much just bird bathing for 1 month, a mission. And so a few days before, I'd been talking to one of the guys. He was he was an engineer that did the mine sweeping, and with their dogs. Anyway, we were going through some stuff with IEDs, so remotely using a device like a radio to trigger an IED. So we were going. So part of my job with electronic warfare was to see those ones. And anyway, he was unraveling some mines, disarming some mines, and in that first incident, poof. Yeah, so it was like the pink mist that you see, but like for real. And unfortunately, it was Sergeant Brett Till lost his life, lest we forget. And that was where he lost his life, so early into our mission. And a lot of the guys, because we had a big call sign at the time, it was that was a really sort of traumatic incident, and then tough for us as a call sign as well. Because it was so early in the piece, that sort of sets the tone. Oh shit, we're no longer in Kansas, Toto. We're here again, and that was a baptism. So of fire. A few days later, we were still on our big mission. Our call sign. I was on the gun at the time, so I was on the rear gun of a Bushmaster. If for those of you, a Bushmaster is like a big sort of truck bus thing. But it's got a V hull on the bottom of it, and you've got the machine gun at the front and the machine gun at the back, a Mag 58, on the back. And I was manning the back of the vehicle at the time, and then we got into contact, and we ran over a roadside bomb. So there was that boom, and then all of a sudden I was on the gun.
Yep.
And then the next thing I knew, I was.
So you started off on the gun, which looks like this. So we'll put a picture up so people can get an idea. So it looks like that, and then next thing you know, bomb goes off, and then
black cordite smell
Yep.
on the floor, ears ringing. But in that sort of multi-flash second, like it was that boom. That will always be in my mind, like boom, and then it was only a fraction of a second, like thousands of a second, but I'll always remember it, and then I'll always remember that I was on my ass on the floor, and so with that, I will always remember these things where I'm like, okay, ears are ringing, but I could wiggle my fingers, and I could wiggle my toes, and I'm like, oh, thank fuck, I'm alive.
Yeah.
And so that was the first thing, but then from there, it was short-lived because then you're pulling, mass casualties, the guys who hit their head. And for those that you don't know, but a blast like that, it was like a big anti-tank mine in the end. It was about that big, right? 20 kilos worth of explosives.
So a massive mine.
A massive mine, anti-tank. And we ran over it, and it blew the wheel clean off, and it blew the other wheel half off, and then it blew the engine out of the engine block, right? So basically, it did some damage. So, and lucky I wasn't at the front of the car. The guys had some traumatic brain injuries from actually whoever was in the back lucky I was on the gun.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would have just, it would have been
Yeah.
like Goose in Top Gun, where he just ejected and
Yep.
and hit his head
Hits
on
the
the top,
canopy, yeah.
hits the canopy.
Yeah.
So that was a traumatic incident, but then we didn't have the time to really absorb that. It was really traumatic.
Yeah.
But when you're mission focused, it was like take the stuff out. The next day, we loaded up a new car.
Yeah.
Blew up that one in place. That was pretty cool when we saw that too.
Yep.
Like, sort of the planes came in and the bombs coming.
Yep.
Boom. Yeah, and they did that
Yeah.
like 5 times to make sure that vehicle was.
Yeah.
It was
Well and truly.
well
gone.
and truly
Yeah.
mobility kill,
Yep.
and and then it was the job again.
Yeah.
But then a few days later, so this was the
Yep.
trifecta of those specific incidences.
Yeah.
There was a lot more, but that was the first trifecta. We were in contact again.
Yeah.
And is Damian Tomlinson? So he was we knew him as Iceman. You might have seen him on some films. He was on Survivor with the legs. So his legs got blown off.
Yeah.
We ran over an IED, but they
Yep.
were only in the Land Rover.
Yeah.
And boom. So
Far out.
so that was the precursor to all that, and then obviously we had the rest of our tour, which was quite heavy, in terms of our workload as well, and all the other stuff that went on. So I pushed any things aside that you
Yeah.
had, or the trauma or whatever, the incident, so that you could just remain
Yep.
focused.
Far out.
Yeah.
That's pretty full on, man.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, look, obviously you've had some pretty hectic experiences there. I mean, I think that'd be a lot for any human to experience. And, I guess now we move into your exit from defence. So I do know that, you're definitely someone who wanted to be a career soldier. You loved what you were
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
So talk us through some of the challenges you faced and sort of what led to your exit.
Yeah, well, look, I'll be honest. I loved that job. It was it was the best job. Even though now I've found my purpose with invisible injuries, that job was a kick-ass job.
Yeah.
Sort of, and like you said, Dan, I wanted to be a career soldier. But when I got back from the second trip, it was a little bit hard to be able to talk about mental health or anything like that at the time, because we were so focused on still being and I wanted a couple more Guernseys.
Yeah.
It's just like being in a football team or something like that. You're not going to tell anyone about your niggling knee injury or this because
Because you think you're going to come across as weak, which is the case
weak,
at all,
or
but,
then you get benched because then you've got some other recovery.
Yep.
So I had that same sort of feeling. I knew
Yeah.
something wasn't quite right, but I also didn't want to commit career suicide
Yeah.
by letting anyone know. So I actually self-referred to some help
Good on
at
you,
the
man.
time, because I noticed that when you sort of decompress and you get back, you just kind of want to party. You work hard, play hard, right? So so I was playing hard, and to be honest, I was drinking a lot more and just wanting to be with my mates. My wife, my now wife, was like,
Yeah.
"Hey, man, I had this romantic thing in my head that we'd get together and do this. You fell asleep on the first night because you'd taken so many bloody sleeping tablets on the way home,
Yeah.
and then sort of you wanted to be with your mates but not with me. So when you're sort of close to some people, you really become close, even though you want to sort of, you get back and go, I don't want to see
Yep.
you. You kind of have I felt personally that I still needed to be connected to
Yeah.
these people, and anyway, so I knew that, and then I was starting to sort of, I did a bit of abuse, I suppose, of prescription
Yep.
meds
Yeah.
as well, stuff that you get over the counter or
Yep.
whatever, and it was just being a bit silly, and I noticed that something wasn't right.
Yeah.
So I referred,
Yeah.
so that I couldn't be seen as weak or
Yep.
or anything like that, and I sorted it out.
Yeah.
Now, one thing about my job that I mentioned earlier was that I had a top secret clearance, and unfortunately, sometimes being too honest isn't the best policy, right? There's honesty
Yeah.
is the best policy, but you don't need to divulge everything, right?
I
And
think I
like,
see
so
where this
someone,
is
if
going.
someone goes with that, but I had a review
Yep.
of my clearance and
Yeah.
said, look, I had some stuff going on. I've sorted it out now. And, I thought nothing else of it, because he kind of seemed, the reviewing officer seemed that it was all right.
Yeah.
And then I was high flying at the time, so like flavor of the month, I got a commendation for one of my tours.
Yep.
You know, we were doing a really cool capability.
Yep.
We were going to be going elsewhere to learn this cool capability. It was so cool. And the day
But
I
he
was
can't
going,
tell you. Or
I
he'll
can't
have to
tell you. I
kill
can't tell you about it.
Yeah.
But it was really
Yeah.
it was so exciting.
Yeah.
You know, and then at that time, because there was so much cash being flown in, there was so much stuff
Yeah.
going on. I had my stuff ready
Yep.
to fly out to this place to do this stuff, and the boss called me up to the top and said, "You've lost your clearance." So immediately overnight,
Yeah.
I went from flying high to next to nothing at all. So I
Yeah.
got put into a job, in basically from what I was doing, and nothing against warehousing, but I got put into the back
Yep.
of a warehouse for stuff that was really just menial, and then that was me. So
Yeah.
basically, you know, and because everyone was so focused on their work, so that was a bit of the kicker that sort of
Yeah.
helped spiral everything out. And unfortunately, that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
But sometimes when you're so focused like on that, it's easier to get rid of someone as opposed to say, hey, this is going on. So I didn't get diagnosed with my post-traumatic stress formally until I was out.
Yeah.
So I got discharged from the army, and like what Dan was saying, I could have been a career soldier, you know, so I was kicking and screaming to try and stay in. And I found that's probably one of the things that made things even worse, is that I got removed from something that I absolutely loved doing prematurely, and then I had nothing. And so it took me a few years to really overcome
Yep.
that, or even think about that was part of it.
Yeah.
You know, so you resolved that now, but that was the exit from, and then made my PTSD pretty bad.
Well, look, Andy, you know, it's great to hear you talking about that experience, because I mean, look, there's a lot of people out there as well in the gel ball community who are experiencing, you know, mental health issues and challenges, and you know, and I think a lot of people don't know how to take that step forward or what they need to do. But what I really like about what you've done with yourself is you've now started Invisible Injuries.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, so you've decided to take that step forward and look to help others. So do you just want to talk us through a little bit about what that is and what you do?
Absolutely. Thanks for that, mate. And mental health. And today, so I'm going to ask you, Dan, are you okay?
I'm okay, mate. Are you okay?
Yes, I'm okay.
It is the day to ask.
It is
the day we're recording this. Yeah.
Yeah, it is Are You Okay Day. And you know, mental health, especially now in these unprecedented times of COVID, is that mental health is a subject that isn't as taboo anymore, or the conversation that people are much more open to speaking about it. Because one of the things with Invisible Injuries, and one of the things I believe in, is that mental health, just like a physical injury, is real, but it can be worked on, and you can recover from it, and how much work you put in. But once the injury, just say it's a physical injury, has healed or has recovered to a certain point, it's always going to be susceptible to recurrence. Right, so if someone had his knee fixed, you know, the footy players, happens all the time. ACL goes out, they recover, they get back on field, and then it could blow. So that's the same thing with mental health, is that you could fall off the wagon. And so when I first discharged from the army, I was really lucky to have an advocate, and he told me this. He said, "Oh, Andy, swallow your pride, right? And as much as you feel good like this, you just need to allow yourself to be vulnerable, and just swallow the pride and do what you need to do to fix yourself up. So if you need to ask for help, then go and ask for help, and then I'll guide you." So he set that base for it.
Yeah.
Now, before our call, Dan, is that, you know, you asked me, well, when did you move up? And we moved up 4 years ago. Now, when I did learn all those tools, you know, you can learn the apprenticeship and put the tools aside, but you could always grab them at whatever time.
Yeah.
So I was flying high when we came here. My mental health was good, but when I moved from the Central Coast in Sydney up here, I didn't have those supports anymore.
Yep.
And it took a long time again to find it. So I thought, oh yeah, she'll be right. I was all right then, and you'll be right. But it wasn't really that case, man. Is that it took me a while, and when you start ignoring doing what they call self-care, all those little things that you like doing again, you could easily find yourself in a hole. And that's where I found myself. Like, so nearly 3 years ago. It was the start of the culmination of we'd moved up 4 years ago. My old business, I wasn't inspired by that anymore.
Yep.
And we just moved up. I didn't have any support. So everything, and we'd locked in the house. But what happened is that this boiling pot of all these situations came down to a fact where we lost everything.
Yep.
So we lost everything, and I'd wound up some businesses to sort of get where we were, to lock in this house. Then the house didn't work out, and then I found myself, and I got a shit kicker job that really it was just to get money ticking over. So I was finding work for people that didn't want to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so look, as cool as that labour hire, the people were there behind it, the job wasn't really that good.
Yeah.
Especially when you got people that say that they want to work, you find them working, didn't. But that's a different story.
Yeah.
But I found myself in this hole, and we'd just lost our house, and it was the Christmas of 2018. So we were pretty much like homeless overnight again. So overnight we went from here to here. And what happened then was we went camping.
Yeah.
And we were like, just felt like running away.
Yeah.
But we knew that we couldn't because we'd set up our new life up here.
Yep.
So, and then I'd also done a couple of speaking gigs, just like what we're doing now, sharing the story. And my wife was there, we're just having a bottle of wine, or having a couple of drinks, just talking about what we were going to do. And she said, well, Andy, why don't you do some public speaking?
Yep.
I'm like, okay, well, I could do this. And I just said, look, we're in this spot now, and I'm not the type of personality as much as I can be down, and we're all human, right? We're all human, but you can be down. I'm not the type of guy that's just going to let that, I'm not going to wallow. Like, so I have my cry. Yeah. It's just like getting lost when you're doing own, have a cry, get it all out, and then sort of start to work. And so I just promised myself at that time, I'm going to get myself better and do what I need to do. And then Claire was my wife, she said, why don't you document that? And I went, okay, well, you might be able to help some other people around with what we're doing. And then the whole thing with the caravanning and going around, instead of running away, it's like, why don't we do this in our area? And then maybe we could replicate that. So then what we can do is then help our key audience connect with organizations and providers that are local to them based on their interests and what's available. So because there's 5,000 organisations, or they call them ex-services organisations around Australia, a lot of them independent.
Yep.
So it's just, I don't need to be the person providing all those services that they're doing. I just need an alignment. Connect the dots, have an alignment with what we have in common, and then allow you to do your niche and then us to do our niche, and then introduce people together. So that's what, Invisible Injuries is about, and it's about improving the mental health and well-being of veterans, first responders, and their families that are experiencing post-traumatic stress. Because a big thing, we're very family focused.
Yeah.
With my wife, she's always. We have an agreement. If I'm being a bit of a, PTSD day, or if I'm being a dick, she'll say, "Hey, you're being a dick," and I'll go. And instead of going, "You don't understand. You weren't in the war, man. You never know." It's me. I wanted to be the man that has a really great support, good for my kids. And so when she says that, I'm like, oh, I better go paddling, or I might go and book a session in with the gel blasters and go and shoot some rounds off and have some fun and do that.
Yeah,
and stuff. I think that's the release. So that's the thing. So what it is, it's about sharing my story, and it's not about just the lived experience of my story. So it's about going, oh, what do I do? And go, I can take the stuff out, pick and match, and then put what it is in that you might like doing. So in this case here, if Andy has lived in Noosa and like paddleboarding, well, if I live in Morayfield and like gel blasting, I'd take that out and put this in. But I'd also do like gel blasting. So all those little things there, it's about connecting people with what's local to them. Yeah. And then also sharing stories, because I think like even with the podcast now, and then what you guys are doing with your Ozgel podcast is that people share those stories. They go, okay, I connect with that. Yeah. And this is what I can grab from that information and then apply it to myself. So that's...
Well, Andy, my man, look, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
No worries.
Should make mention, with utmost respect, our thoughts are with the families of every soldier that has passed.
Absolutely, lest we forget.
Yeah, lest we forget. And, you know, I mean, you know, we've had a mutual friend who's passed, which is when we last saw each other, was at his funeral.
Yep.
And you know, so yeah.
Sean McCarthy.
Yep. So if the McCarthys are watching, just want to say hi to you guys.
Yep.
And you know, and look, the families of all those who've been left behind. You know, if you want to get into gel balling, more than happy to help you out. You know, we'll get you outside and mingling with everyone. You know, it's a really good community.
Absolutely, and that was one of the things that really got me with the gel ball. If I can just quickly mention that, is a few months ago, I didn't know that it was as such a big as what it is, and we were doing a ex-services, you know, as a family day with the young veterans on the Sunshine Coast, and they'd booked the experiences up at Twin Waters. So Ray Carson, Experiences,
HQ,
big shout out to
you.
Ray. How you going, mate? And so, and the beautiful thing with that was that the barbecue, and all the kids, and my son's 8, loved it. All those little kids, even the boys and the girls, and it was really a really cool thing to be able to do. I'm like, wow, with these gel balls, they feel like the gushy things that I've seen at the markets. I'm like, this is really cool. And then we had a thing to be able to, I could do this with my kid. You know, and as much as I like the other formats like your paintball or your simunition or whatever, they leave big ass welts, especially if you're like got a bucks party or something like that and you get shot a few times. You know, the last thing you want is to have a big ass welt on your face before a wedding. You know, so one of the things is I could do it with my kids, and I think that was really something there that ties into the whole family thing and the gel blasting and an outlet. So,
well, man, it's going to be good to see you out there. I mean, so for those who don't already know, there's the Veteran 400 event that's going to be held at Donnybrook. I think it's currently scheduled for early November.
Yes,
and you're going to be coming along and assisting in that event, aren't you?
Absolutely. I've been asked to assist in the event in a different capacity. So just so that you know, Ozgel, who's one of the sponsors for the event, is that the Veterans 400. It doesn't have to be veterans. So if you're in the community, they're going to be going for the Australian record, to try and beat the Australian record of the amount of combatants on any field at one time. So I think it's over 400, or I think they're aiming for 450 or more. So please, if you've got a squad together, come down. And what the idea is at the moment is there's going to be, I think, 9 or 10 teams of 50.
Yeah.
Right, on the field at any one time, right?
Hectic.
It's going to be carnage. Yeah. So there's going to be a few different games. And then the final game will be the red versus the blue, where everyone's going to be on the field at the same time. And so I reckon that if you can, get your gel blasters out, get your teams, and then you can come in. And even if you can form a whole mob of 50, well, man, you know,
it's going to be amazing. So, yeah, shout out to Matt from Garrison there for putting that together, and also, of course, to Dave and Christy out at Donnybrook for providing the field for such an amazing event.
It'll be an amazing event. And so I'm really excited about it. And so today, after this podcast as well, you know, I'm going to talk about Dan about getting a rig. And the beautiful part about my role is, right, so I'll be the team leader for the team leaders, which means... Does that make me the general? I don't know. Anyway,
you can be the general.
I could call I'm going to call myself the general, man. I've got my little tash here. No, we won't go down that line. But you know, sort of, then I can sort of come in, go and blat a few people down, and then go, hey.
Then it's done.
Hey, I'm just a medic.
Yeah. So make sure you come out, guys. You know, you get to meet Andy out there. And
I'd love to have a chat with you.
Other people, so that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
But look, Andy, I guess we'll wrap this up now.
Thank you so much.
Can you just take us through, you know, some of the ways people can find you on social media and Invisible Injuries and the like?
Absolutely. So we're just building our website at the moment. So we did a fundraising to build that. So it's invisibleinjuries.org.au. But we're actually also on Facebook and Instagram as Invisible Injuries, so you can't miss us. And we have our own podcast as well, Dan, called the Invisible Injuries Podcast, which is reachable on Spotify, Google,
awesome.
Amazon when it gets launched, and then also Apple.
Make sure you check that out, guys.
Yeah, so, you know, look, and it's just about sharing the stories and lived experiences.
Awesome. All right, well, look, bro, thanks very much again for coming out today. So good to see you again, man. So we're going to have another chat after this podcast, I think. We've got a lot of catching up to do.
Absolutely.
But, hey, for you guys at home, as always, I'm Dan from Ozgel. You can find us on Facebook and YouTube under Ozgel, Instagram at OzgelAmmo. We're on TikTok, not very active there, though. And also, we've got our online website, www.ozgel.com.au. That's all we got for you today, guys. See ya.
See ya.